The missing father's photo changed everything. When Marcus Chen discovered that old photograph in his mother's attic, he thought he was looking at a stranger. The man in the picture stood next to a building that wouldn't exist for another 20 years. But the man had his father's face, his father's scar above the left eyebrow, even his father's wedding ring. The same father who vanished without a trace 15 years ago. Marcus had been 7 when his father disappeared. One morning, David Chen kissed his family goodbye and left for his job at the physics lab. He never came home. The police found his car parked at the lab. His keycard showed he'd entered the building at 8:47 a.m. Security footage confirmed it. But after that, nothing. No exits recorded, no trace of where he went. David Chen had simply stopped existing. For years, Marcus accepted the official story. His father had abandoned them. Maybe he'd started a new life somewhere else. His mother, Sarah, never talked about it. She packed away David's things and moved forward. Life continued, empty but stable. Marcus grew up, went to college, became an engineer. The mystery of his father became a dull ache, something he'd learned to live with. Then Sarah decided to sell the house. She asked Marcus to help clear the attic. That's when he found the box, tucked behind old Christmas decorations. Inside were photos he'd never seen. Pictures of his father at work, at conferences with colleagues. Normal stuff until he reached the last photo. The photograph showed David Chen standing in front of the Millennium Tower in downtown Portland. He was older, grayer, wearing clothes Marcus didn't recognize. The timestamp at the bottom read June 15, 2018, 3 years after David had vanished. The Millennium Tower hadn't even been planned when David disappeared. Construction didn't start until 2016. Marcus's hands shook as he studied the photo. Everything about it seemed real. The lighting, the shadows, the way his father's hair moved in the wind. This wasn't some clever fake, but it was impossible. How could his father appear in a photo from 2018 in a location that didn't exist when he disappeared? Sarah found Marcus still staring at the photo an hour later. Her face went white when she saw it. She tried to grab it, but Marcus pulled back. They argued. Sarah insisted the photo meant nothing, that it had to be fake. But Marcus saw the fear in her eyes. She knew something. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He examined the photo under a magnifying glass, ran it through online authentication tools. Every test confirmed what seemed impossible. The photo was genuine, unedited, taken with a film camera manufactured in 2017. The negative was in the box too, confirming the image hadn't been digitally altered. Marcus started investigating. He visited the Millennium Tower, stood in the exact spot where his father had stood in the photo. The angle was perfect, every detail matched. He talked to security, showed them the picture. One guard, an older man named Pete, stared at it for a long time. He said he remembered seeing someone who looked like that man, but it was years ago, maybe 2018 or 2019. The man had seemed confused, lost. Pete had asked if he needed help, but the man had hurried away. This revelation sent Marcus deeper into his search. He dug through his father's old research papers looking for clues. David had been working on theoretical physics, specifically something called temporal field dynamics. The papers were full of equations Marcus barely understood, but certain phrases stood out. Temporal displacement. Chronological instability. Observer paradox. Marcus tracked down his father's research partner, Dr. Elena Vasquez. She was retired now, living in Seattle. When Marcus showed her the photo, she gripped her coffee cup so hard it cracked. She was quiet for a long time. Then she told him about Project Kronos. The project had been classified, funded by a defense contractor interested in theoretical time manipulation. Not time travel exactly, but something stranger. They were trying to create pockets of altered time, spaces where time moved differently. David had been the lead researcher. He'd believed they were close to a breakthrough. Elena revealed that the day David disappeared, he'd been running an unauthorized experiment. He'd called her that morning, excited, saying he'd figured out how to stabilize a temporal field. She'd warned him to wait, to follow protocols. But David was stubborn. By the time Elena arrived at the lab, David was gone. The equipment was fried. The official investigation found nothing suspicious, just an electrical malfunction. The project was shut down. But Elena had kept David's personal notes, the ones he'd written outside the official documentation. She gave them to Marcus. The notes described David's theory that time wasn't linear, but layered. like transparent sheets stacked on top of each other. Under certain conditions, someone could slip between layers, moving through time in ways that seemed impossible. The final entry, dated the morning of his disappearance, was chilling. David wrote that he'd discovered something wrong with their calculations. The temporal fields they were creating weren't contained. They were spreading, slowly, invisibly. Anyone exposed to them might experience temporal displacement without warning. The effect could take years to manifest. David planned to test a containment solution that morning. Marcus pieced together what must have happened. His father's experiment had worked, but not how he'd expected. Instead of containing the temporal field, he'd been caught in it. He'd been displaced in time, thrown forward to 2018. The photo was proof. His father had survived the displacement, at least initially. But where was he now? If David had appeared in 2018, why hadn't he come home? Marcus researched missing persons cases from that time period. He found something disturbing. In July 2018, a month after the photo was taken, Portland police had found an unidentified man dead in an abandoned warehouse. The man had no identification. His fingerprints weren't in any database. The case had gone cold. Marcus obtained the case file through a Freedom of Information request. The physical description matched his father. The man had been wearing a wedding ring with an inscription. Marcus's mother had given his father that ring. The inscription read, "Forever yours, S.C. Sarah Chen." The cause of death was listed as cellular degradation of unknown origin. The man's body had aged rapidly, as if years had passed in hours. The medical examiner had no explanation. Marcus did. His father's notes mentioned that temporal displacement could cause biological instability. The human body wasn't meant to exist outside its proper time. Eventually, it would break down. Marcus confronted his mother with everything he'd learned. Sarah broke down. She admitted she'd known about David's research, about the dangers. After he'd disappeared, men in suits had visited. They'd told her David was gone, that his research was classified, that she could never speak about it. They'd given her money, set up college funds for Marcus. In exchange, she'd signed papers agreeing to silence. But there was more. Sarah revealed that strange things had been happening since David's disappearance. Items in the house would move on their own. She'd sometimes glimpse someone who looked like David in reflections. Once, she'd found a note in David's handwriting that said, "I'm trying to come back." She'd convinced herself she was imagining things. Marcus realized the truth. His father hadn't just been displaced once. He'd been fractured across time, existing in multiple moments simultaneously. The photo from 2018 was just one piece. David was scattered through the years, trying to reassemble himself, trying to return to his proper time. The investigation led Marcus to other photographs, other sightings. A security camera in 2020 showing a man who looked like David. A tourist photo from 2022 with David visible in the background. Each time he looked more desperate, more degraded. Time was killing him slowly. Marcus found David's hidden laboratory in the basement of their old house. His mother hadn't known it existed. The equipment was old, but functional. David's notes were everywhere, along with new additions in his father's handwriting but dated years after his disappearance. Messages from across time. David had been trying to communicate, to leave instructions for fixing what had gone wrong. The final note was dated just a week ago. It was barely legible, written in a shaking hand. David explained that he existed in a temporal loop, experiencing past, present, and future simultaneously. He could sometimes influence objects, leave messages, but he couldn't fully materialize in any single moment. He was dying, spreading thinner across time with each passing day. But he'd found a solution. If Marcus could activate the equipment with specific modifications David had detailed, it might create a temporal anchor. It wouldn't bring David back, but it would allow him to exist in one moment long enough to say goodbye. Marcus spent 3 days preparing. His mother begged him not to risk it. The same temporal field that had taken David could claim Marcus too. But Marcus had to try. He needed closure. He needed to see his father one last time. On a Thursday evening, Marcus activated the modified equipment. The basement filled with a strange blue light. The air seemed to thicken, to ripple like water. And then David was there. Not fully solid, flickering like a bad television signal, but there. Father and son looked at each other across 15 years and infinite time. David tried to speak, but his voice came from everywhere and nowhere. He managed 3 words that Marcus could understand. "Proud of you." David reached out his hand. Marcus knew he shouldn't touch him. The temporal field around David was unstable, dangerous, but he reached out anyway. Their fingers met for just a second. Marcus felt a jolt of electricity, of time itself flowing through him. He saw flashes of David's experience, the confusion of existing in multiple times, the pain of watching his family from outside normal time, the desperate attempts to return. Then David smiled and shook his head. He pointed to the equipment and made a cutting motion. Marcus understood. The field had to be destroyed. David had to be released. Keeping him anchored would only prolong his suffering. Marcus deactivated the equipment. David began to fade, but before he disappeared completely, he pulled something from his pocket and set it on the table. Then he was gone. Not just from the room, but from time itself. The temporal fractures sealed. David Chen finally stopped existing in any timeline. On the table sat David's wedding ring. Inside the band was a new inscription, one that hadn't been there before. It read, "Thank you for finding me." Marcus picked up the ring. It was warm, real, solid, proof that everything had happened. He brought it to his mother. They cried together, finally able to mourn properly. David wasn't missing anymore. He was gone, but they knew why. They knew he'd loved them until the very end, across all of time. The photograph from 2018 still exists. Marcus keeps it in a frame on his desk. Sometimes people ask about it, about the strange story behind it. Marcus tells them it's his father, that the photo was taken at a time when anything was possible. Most people think he's joking, but a few, the ones who look closer, notice that the photo seems to shimmer sometimes, as if the man in it exists in more than one moment, as if time itself remembers David Chen. Marcus destroyed the laboratory equipment and burned his father's research notes. Some knowledge is too dangerous to preserve. But late at night, when the house is quiet, Marcus sometimes feels time move, strangely around him. Objects shift slightly. Shadows fall in impossible directions. He wonders if his brief contact with his father changed him, if he now exists slightly outside normal time, too. His mother has noticed it as well. Clocks run differently around Marcus. Photos of him sometimes show multiple exposures, as if he's moving through time at a different rate than everyone else. They don't talk about it. They've learned to live with mystery, with the impossible. The men in suits never returned. Officially, David Chen is still just missing. The truth is buried in classified files and family secrets. But Marcus knows. His father didn't abandon them. He'd been lost in time, scattered across years, trying desperately to come home. The photograph was his message, his proof that love transcends even the boundaries of time itself. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, Marcus sits in his father's old study. He can almost feel David's presence, like an echo bouncing through time. He talks to the empty room, updates his father on his life, his work, his dreams, and sometimes, just sometimes, he finds responses. A book moved to a relevant page, a note in familiar handwriting, a photograph that shouldn't exist. Time isn't linear. It's layered, complex, full of mysteries we're only beginning to understand. Marcus learned this the hard way, but he also learned that love persists across all layers of time. His father's love reached through years, through impossible physics, through death itself to say goodbye. The missing father's photo hangs on the wall, a reminder that some mysteries are worth solving, even when the truth is stranger than anyone could imagine. And if you look at it just right, in the correct light, at the perfect angle, you can see something amazing. You can see a man who loved his family so much that not even time itself could stop him from trying to come home.